So Elphaba had just returned to Fiyero's homeland to find out that everyone had gone. Her son, as well as Fiyero's family, had been taken by the soldiers. The only one left was Nanny and Chistery. Chistery's her little monkey friend. So obviously, Elphaba goes to find them. She figures out that all of them have been taken into the soldiers' camp, except for Lear, her son, because her son was useless to them because they didn't know that he's an illegitimate child of Fiyero's. Because the soldiers kind of liked the son, they just dumped him and tied him up in somebody's barn on the way. Elphaba spends the next few years searching for these poor people, and she never finds them. As she's searching, she's also doing experiments on the monkeys by taking the wings of birds and de-winging them and surgically sewing those wings into the monkeys. She's still also experimenting with the grimoire, but she can still only partially read it. Like, it's like the words swim around so she can get little pieces. And so she hasn't been able to really get the animals to talk the way that she wants them to. As all of this is going on, Elphaba gets word from her dad that her sister had unexpectedly been killed. Her sister had been leading a unionist children's church group, and then that's when the house fell on her head. But thankfully, none of the kids got hurt, and they all got to attend church. Attendance was apparently very important. So Elphaba lets her son know that her sister has died, and her son is like, oh my gosh, you have to tell Nanny, because Nanny is still there. And she's like, we can't tell Nanny. Nanny's like 150 years old. She was actually like 78 years old or something. And he was like, no, we have to tell her she loved Nessa Rose. And she's like, she's an old lady. You're just going to make her upset. And there's like, hey, Nanny. Nanny was indeed very upset. And Elphaba was reminded once again that Nessa Rose was 100% the favorite of the entire family. So Elphaba leaves Lear in charge to take care of Nanny, take care of Chistery, and take care of the house. And she flies off on her broom back to the Munchkinland. Back in Munchkinland, Dorothy had already come and gone. Like, they had no interaction at this point. The first person that Elphaba goes to see is her dad. She brings a random page from the grimoire with her because she wants to see if her dad can read it or if it's just her that's like having some issues with reading it. She also wanted to know if her dad, the unionist preacher, thought that this book was evil. Frex, her father figure, is also fairly old at this point too, and he's also very sad, and he can't see very well, so he's holding up the page, and he's like, I can actually see the letters, like, really clearly and really boldly, but I have no idea what this says. I don't know what language this is. And she's like, I thought it was like that. Now, by birthright, Elphaba was the one who was supposed to be the eminent Throp. Like, she was supposed to be the actual ruler, but she didn't ever want that. She never wanted to be in charge of anyone. She said that she should barely be in charge of herself. As she's hanging out with her dad, who has now fallen asleep in his chair, that's when Glinda shows up. Because dad is on the front porch, they're talking on the front porch, then Glinda appears. Glinda walks up like, hey girl, hey! And she's wearing like this crazy outfit, like she's got like the princess thing like fully on. And Elphaba is like, I thought you were supposed to get better at dressing with age. Listen, if there's one thing Elphaba's got going for her, it's that she's funny. And Glinda's all over here like, oh, I kind of like it, you know. The other day, I was here when that house fell on your sister, sorry about that, and I was wearing this giant pink getup. It was so funny. And then she was like, I think I kind of rocked it, though. Like, Glinda is just... So Elphaba was like, so you were here when it happened? And Glinda was like, well, not quite, but I was like 20 minutes off because Glinda was there doing charity out in the foothills because she wants everybody to like her. Like, that's literally what she said. She said that she does charity so that the people will like her so that they'll be nice to her husband whenever he wants to come and do whatever he does. This is just another example of how everything that Glinda does is calculated. Like, she doesn't do anything for, like, no reason. So they're just sort of chatting, and of course, Fiyero is always on Elphaba's brain, and so she says to Glinda, and she's like, hey, I heard a rumor that you and Fiyero got together whenever you were, like, in the city. And Glinda was like, no, why would I do that? That's disgusting. I think affairs are stupid. She also then literally said, and don't you remember? He was dark-skinned. Like, Glinda was racist. And this little comment just kind of reminded Elphaba who she was talking to. Because, like, she really did like Glinda and admired Glinda, but then she was like, oh yeah, she's a very problematic person. I need to, like, keep her at a bit of a distance. So then Glinda is going on and she's telling Elphaba, like, how her sister died and how, well, she doesn't think it was actually painful because, you know, like, you're gonna die immediately if something just falls that heavily on your head. Thanks for the comfort, Glinda. And then she went on to say, and even though that happened, there was no blood. It was crazy. Glinda. And Elphaba's like, okay. Then Glinda and her big mouth goes on to be like, yeah, the girl Dorothy was in there. She had this little annoying dog. I don't know what was wrong with that dog, but he was so annoying. And Elphaba was like, oh, there was someone in the house? There was someone in the house that killed my sister? And Glinda's like, don't go after that girl. It was just an accident. And Elphaba's like, oh, okay, you're probably right. Like, I don't know why they would do that. And she was like, yeah, exactly. And then she was like, yeah, I actually sent her on her way because, like, she was going to be a real political icon here. And we really didn't need that. Because, reminder, Nessa Rose was viewed as a dictator by the Munchkinlanders. The only reason that they hadn't deposed her was because she was a very powerful witch. Like, she could enchant things, and they were all scared of her. Just like her dad did, she held a lot of views that they did not agree with, like religious views. But the big difference between her and her dad was that she had enough power in order to enact those views and to try and make everybody else fall into line to follow those views. So the Munchkinlanders literally viewed Dorothy as a savior. But Dorothy didn't know anything about the politics of this, and Dorothy is just a child, which is why Glinda was like, we need to get her out of here. People always like to make the joke at this point that Dorothy would be really mad that Glinda sent her to walk the yellow brick road instead of like taking her to the train or flying her off there. And that might be true, but the reason that Glinda did this was because she knew that Glinda herself needed time to deal with everything that was going to happen because of this death. But there's one thing that Glinda didn't account for, and that's how much Elphaba wanted these shoes. Elphaba viewed the shoes as her inheritance. To Elphaba, the shoes were a family heirloom. Her sister had told her that she would get the shoes if she ever died. Those shoes were the gift that Elphaba had never received from anyone. They were created using both her father's love and the love of the man Turtleheart that she had never met. It didn't matter to Elphaba that the shoes were magic. It just mattered that they were those shoes. Glinda gifted the shoes to Dorothy because she thought that they might interest the wizard. However, Glinda put a spell on the shoes that made it so that Dorothy could not take off the shoes. Like she says later on when she reaches Elphaba, she's like, I would give you the shoes. You can have the shoes. I hate the shoes. They hurt. I can't take them off. But of course, nobody understands where Elphaba is coming from. They don't understand why these shoes are so important. And Elphaba probably doesn't even understand why these shoes are so important to her. She had already decided to leave Dorothy alone. They'd had that discussion. But as soon as she found out that she had stolen her shoes, like it was on. It was over. And Glinda didn't even really apologize. She was like, she's just a nice girl. She's just a sweet little girl. She needed some help. She doesn't have anything except for those shoes. And Elphaba's like, but those are my shoes. At this point, Elphaba is mad. And she's like, I'm going to go get my shoes back. And Glinda's like, don't do that. Leave that kid alone. And Elphaba's like, what do you mean? And Glinda even doubles down and she's like, well, I'm the one who enchanted those shoes and I'm the one who put them back together after they were breaking for Nessa Rose, so I think it was really up to me what happened to the shoes. And I don't care. I gave them to Dorothy, so... And then Elphaba was done with her. She never spoke to Glinda again. At this point, Elphaba leaves and she is pulled aside by some guards because the wizard wants to speak with her. This is her first time actually seeing the wizard. She had had an audience with him before, but he was behind a thundercloud. So before seeing the wizard, the guards are like, what is this paper? Because they searched her. And it was the page of the Grimmery that she brought with her. And she was like, that's mine, and the wizard is going to want to see it. And they're like, well, you can't bring anything in. We'll show it to him. And she's like, what? And then they take it anyways. So then Elphaba goes in to see him, and she's still in her territory, by the way. Like, she is the eminent Throp, even if she doesn't take that title and use it. The wizard displays himself as a sociopath, as always. During this interaction, he basically tells her that he's not responsible for any of the damage that he's done or any of the crimes that he's committed, and he hasn't committed murder because he's from another world, and so these rules don't apply to him. What Elphaba wants out of this interaction is that she wants to find out what happened to Fiero's family. Are they safe? Are they still alive? Can I get them back? What do you want from me? The wizard essentially wants two things. He wants her to give up all of her power here and leave back to where she had been, because he knew that she was difficult and he didn't want to try and make a treaty with her. And he also wanted the Grimmery. The guards had brought in the page, and the wizard, unlike Elphaba, could fully read it. The wizard was actually shocked that Elphaba could read it, because only people from his world can read the Grimmery, which was why they had brought it to hide it in this world. He tells Elphaba that other than Nora, the young daughter, all of the rest of them had been killed. And Fiero's remaining son had been killed publicly and painfully to be made a message of. Nora, who he dragged in there, was being tortured. In order to free her, he required the Grimmery. See you next time!